Hello, everyone. Welcome back. So, today we are getting into something you use all the time on the job. Now, how do you take millions of rows of data and turn that into something simple like total sales last month? That's exactly what SQL aggregations do for you. Here's everything we are covering today. We are covering count, sum, average, minimum, maximum, group by, having, order by, and limit. Let's jump right into it. So we'll start with the simplest one, which is count. Now, count tells you how many rows exist in a table or in a group. Here is the syntax of count. So you open your DB browser and head to your execute SQL. Then let's see the syntax of count. So this is what we are doing. We are selecting the count of everything from this orders table. What does this do? The database goes through every row in the orders table and counts them. Then it returns a single number. That is the total number of orders. Let's run this and see what we are talking about. Yes. So it goes into the database and goes into through the order table and counts everything there and returns the number, which is 10 here. And we can verify by going here. You can see there are 10 orders here in the order table. Now, you can also count a specific column instead of using the star, which is for everything. So, for example, you could as well do count customer ID, which will count only the rows where customer ID is not empty. But for most cases, count star, which is count everything or count all, is what you use. So you see that when we run that query, the database comes back with one number, which was the 10 we saw here. Now, this is simple, right? But it is very powerful. Heading to the next, which is sum. This sum adds up all the values in a column. The classic example is total sales. So looking at the syntax, let's select the sum of sales from our order table. Let's run this and see. Yeah, here is what happens behind the scenes. The database looks at every single row in the sales column, adds each value to a running total, and then returns the final grand total. So no calculator is needed, no exporting to Excel, just one query and you have your answer. This is how businesses calculate total revenue for a quarter, total expenses for a year, or total units sold for a product. So you see, when we run the query, we got our total sales from the orders table over here as 35,940. Yeah. So let's talk about the average now, which is the AVG. That stands for average. Let's look at the syntax for our AVG, which is the average. So assuming we are taking the average of sales from the orders table, the database adds up all the sales value just like sum does, but then it divides that total by the number of rows. The result is the average sale per order. So in this case, there are 10 rows. So when it adds up all the sales, when it sums up the sales, then it divides it by 10. which is the total number of rows in the orders table. So business people love averages. They asked questions like, what's a typical order size? What's the average customer spend? So this average gives you that answer instantly. One thing to watch out for is null values are ignored in average. So if some rows have missing sales data, they won't pull up. They won't pull your average down. Now let's look at minimum and maximum. Before then, we could run this query so we see what our average for our sales column in the orders table is. We see our average here. So you see that it was divided by 10, which was the total number of rows in the sales in the orders table. That is the sales column. Now going to the mean and mask. Mean, which is the minimum, gives you the smallest value in a column. Looking at its syntax, we are taking the mean of sales in our order table. This should give us, yes. Let's go to max, which gives us the largest value in that column of our table. So if we write max our syntax and we run this query, we see the largest value in our sales column in the table. These are great for spotting outliers. If someone accidentally sells something for $1, minimum will catch that. Did you have a huge or unusual order? The maximum will show that. So in business reporting, you see this used all the time. Lowest sale, highest sale, earliest date, latest date, smallest product price, largest quantity ordered. You see all these things. Now, why aggregations matter? Before we move on, let me explain why this topic matters. Executives and managers do not want to scroll through 10,000 rows of data. They don't want a spreadsheet with every single transaction. They want summaries, headlines, the big picture. How much did we sell total? What's our average order? Which region performed best? SQL aggregations give you exactly those summaries. This is how you turn raw data into actual business answers. So don't skip this session at all. This is what you do every single day as a data analyst. Now let's make aggregations even more useful. So far, we've calculated totals for the entire table, but what if you want total sales by region or average sales by category or count of orders by month? That's what group by does. Here's the syntax. Say we are selecting we are selecting employee ID. Let's use employee ID. We are selecting region. Let me click all this and start over. We are selecting region um, of sums of sales from orders table, then we group them by region. Yeah. Let me explain exactly what happens when you run this query. First, SQL looks at the group by column, in this case, region. Then it splits all your data into separate groups based on the unique values in that column. So all the north region rows go into one bracket. All south region rows go into another bucket. East, west, one bucket per region. Then after the groups are created, SQL runs the aggregation, in this case, sum of sales, inside each bucket separately. The result, one row per region, with the total sales for that region. Does it make? I don't know if it makes sense. Let's run this query and see. So we see this has been grouped by region, and the totals have been summed by the regions also. So this is the total sum of sales in the Ashanti region, total sum of sales in the Bono region, total sums of sales Central, Greater Accra, Volta, Western. Let me explain how the query, what exactly happens when you run the query again. So the SQL looks at the group by column, in this case, region here, which is here. Then it splits all your data into separate groups based on the unique values in that column. So all the regions go into separate brackets. As we can all see here, the Ashanti region is in a separate bracket. The Bono region is in a separate bracket. The Central, all are in separate buckets. Then after these groups are created, these separate buckets of groups or separate groups are created, then SQL runs the aggregation. In this case, sum, because we are using sum here. It runs the sum of the sales for each region. That is, it runs sum of sales for all the regions that are Ashanti. So it adds them up and brings out the total sales of the Ashanti region. Adds the next one, brings out the total sales of the next region. So that means one row per region with the total sales for that region. I hope it makes sense now. Now, let's visualize the group by. Here it's a mental picture that might help. Think of group by like sorting laundry before washing. You make piles, white ones, whites in one pile, darks in another, colors in third. The group by color, the group by color part is making those piles. Then you do the calculation, that is washing inside each separately. Let's take another example on average sales by category. So what if you want the average sales for each product category? Let's look at the syntax of the query for that. So let's select category, and we want the average sales for each category, each product category from our orders table, and we are grouping by category. We are grouping by category. Now let's run this. Yeah. Now SQL groups all rows by category first. That is electronics together, office supplies together, furnitures together, networkings together. Then it calculates the average sales inside each category group. The results tells you which categories have high average orders and which have low average orders. That's actionable information. Maybe the electronics is high, but office supplies is low. Now you know where to focus. So we can verify this by browsing the orders table for our category, and we see we have our electronics here, we have furnitures, we have accessories, networking, all of this. So you see that our SQL groups all this into electronics category, furniture category, accessories category, networking, and the rest. Then finds the average for each group. Once you have your group results or your grouped results, you almost always want to sort them. That's where order by comes in. Let's say you want total sales by region with the highest sales first. The syntax of that query could be you are selecting region of the sum of sales as, let's say, total sales. Then from our orders table, where we group by region and order by total sales descending in a descending order. Now let's run this and we see the results here. Two things to notice here. First, I used as total sales to give a name to the sum column. This makes the query easier to read. Second, the order by total sales, then I added this which I pronounce as descending. This sorts from the biggest to the smallest. That is, this DESK means descending or descending order. So if you wanted smallest first, you would use ascending, which is this, that stands for ascending. But this ascending is usually the default, so you don't always have to write it. Now, one more thing. Order by always comes after group by. The order of your keywords in SQL matters. It matters a lot. It matters very well. Now, sometimes you don't need every row. Sometimes you just want the top performance. That's what limit does. So that is where limit comes in. Now, assuming we are selecting the region column, we are taking the sums of we are selecting and grouping by region, and you are taking the sums of the sales column as total sales from the orders table. We are still descending, and we are still ordering in descending order, and we give in a limit of 5, and we give in a limit of 5. This query gives you only the top 5 regions by total sales. So you see, it has only given us the top 5 regions, which are from Greater Accra to Volta, by total sales. So limit is perfect for leaders boards. top 10 products, best five salespeople, highest three spending customers, and a whole lot. Just remember, limit without order by doesn't make much sense because without sorting, top five isn't clearly defined. Always pair limit with order by. Now let me show you something that trips up lots of beginners. That is having. Here's the simple way to remember it. Where, which is this here, filters row before grouping happens. And having filters groups after grouping happens. Let me come again. Where filters rows before groupings happen. And having, which is this, filters groups after grouping happens. You cannot use where to filter on an aggregation because the aggregation doesn't exist until after group by runs. Let me show you an example. Suppose you want only regions where total sales are greater than $10,000. So with that, let me clear this here. We are selecting, we want regions where total sales are greater than $10,000. So with that, after our grouping is done, we use our having where our total sales are greater than 10,000. Yeah, let's run this. Mhm. You see, you see what just happened. Having comes after group by, and it looks for the aggregated results. So it is after the aggregation is done, that is when having looks for the aggregated results or looks through the aggregated results and give you what you are looking for based on your condition. Where we are looking for total sales that are greater than $10,000, it has given us Greater Accra, the region Greater Accra, where the total sales are $18,000. So if you tried to write where total sales if you try to write where total sales instead of having where total sales greater than 1,000, you'd get an error. Let's run this and see. You see, we've gotten an error because total sales doesn't exist as a column in the original table. It only exists after the sum is calculated. So remember where for rules, where for rule filters, having for group filters, where for rule filters, having for group filters. Let me give you some real questions that businesses ask every single day. All these all these are answered with the tools you just learned, which is let me give some of the questions. Which region is our top performer? That is one question that businesses are likely to ask or businesses ask every single day. Which categories has the highest average sales? What's our overall average order size? Which customers or which customer has the highest total spending? How many orders did we get each month? What's the minimum and maximum sales this quarter? Every single one of those or every single one of these is count, sum, average, mean, max, group by, order, and limit. It uses all this. This isn't just academic. This is the job. Like this is what you do in the job. So Now it is your turn to try something on your own. That is your assignment. So looking at your assignments, write SQL queries to answer these questions that are below here. What is the total revenue from all orders? So I will share the database with you in the description so that you can get access to the database and use for your assignments. What is the highest single sale amount? What is the average sales amount per order? Then you calculate total sales for each region. You show region and the total sales. Then using group by and having show only regions where total sales are greater than 10,000, like we did, $10,000. Now take your time, test each query, and make sure you understand why each one works. If you get stuck, scroll back through the session. The answers are all here, or you can put your questions in the comment section and we'll answer, we'll get to you. So that is it for section 8. Next time, we learn joins. That's where we connect multiple tables together. Yeah, that's where we connect multiple tables together. It's a game changer. So see you then. Thank you.